Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of VCTV. I'm your host, Kyle Ellicott, and we have got an exciting special edition of VCTV here today. As we've talked about on previous episodes, this is an important time of the year. I continue to mention this because I want to make sure everyone understands how impactful it is right now, even with everything that's happened this year in 2020. This quarter, this time, this second half, this turning of the year, sprint towards this to the end of the year is still very important. If you're an investor, you know this. This is the time when you're paying attention to who's fundraising, where are the opportunities, what's happening in technology, changing, launching, et cetera. What's happening in industries, what's happening around the world. That's what we bring to you here on VCTV as we bring the best and the brightest from around the world in their respected industries and regions to share that with you from the ground. And entrepreneurs, this is also a big deal for you as you're building, as you're fundraising, as you're trying to figure out who you want to communicate with and learn more from. This is that time, and VCTV is that show for you. And with that being said, thank you so much to everyone tuning in today. If you like what you hear today, click subscribe. If you'd like to be on a show like today, as an investor, do reach out. We'd love to have you on a show, whether it's around today's topic or others as well. And entrepreneurs, this is a great opportunity for you to learn how investors think and also what they're interested in. But it's also a show for you. There's a virtual stage that you can join us on here to pitch us as investors live and our entire audience. So do reach out to the LATOKEN team, Maria, Elena, and or myself, and we'll try to find the right spot for you. And before we get started, a big thank you to Elena, Maria, and to the entire LATOKEN team for making VCTV possible every single day, multiple times a day, all around the world, on your screen, your device, all the time. Big thank you to everybody there. And with that being said, I'm your host, Kyle Ellicott. We're going to go ahead and get started. And I want to welcome our first guest, Alessandro. Welcome to the show. A little introduction and a little bit of background on yourself for everybody.
Great. Thank you, Kyle. Thank you for inviting me to this. Well, my background is, first of all, I'm based in New York. And in fact, I just changed my background from the beautiful landscape in Maine to the campus of Columbia University, which is also my alma mater. I'm Italian originally, so that's why you still some accent, but I came here to the US as a teenager. I spent most of my time in and around New York City, except for a couple of years in Boston when I got my MBA. And my career has been always in the technology business. I'm an engineer by training, computer scientist. I started as a practitioner writing code, and then eventually I moved into more of the business side of things. And I basically spent my career as a combination of entrepreneurial activities, executive assignments in larger corporations, and venture capital. And venture capital has been the bulk of it. About 2/3 of my time is spent making investments, starting in the early 90s. I started the venture capital fund for AT&T at the time. It was a corporate fund, but it was a standalone entity, so AT&T Ventures. And then I moved to a larger firm that's now called Invesco. We're part of Invesco. Private Capital it's part of Invesco, the big asset management company. And then eventually I started a firm with a couple of partners called Vedanta Capital, and I was with that firm until 3 years ago when I decided that I wanted to phase out to focus more on spending more time on making early stage investments on my own, spending more time looking at Europe as an area of investment that's of interest, and also spending more time with my companies. And in fact, over the past year, I have taken an operating role with one of my companies. In fact, I'm the president of a startup. We only raised angel money. We're about to launch a fundraising for our for a seed round, which is going to be substantial. And so I've been trying to go back and forth because I find it, I've always thought the venture capital was a very attractive profession for me because I love working with smart people. I love seeing new technologies and learning new things. And venture capital is like it toy store for me. I mean, you just can roam around and meet all sorts of interesting folks and build the most incredible things, the smartest technologists in the world. And but you are not you're sort of a mile wide and inch thin, because you can. I try to specialize over the years. It goes in waves. Sometimes started investing in new media, and then I moved to telecommunications, and I moved to investing in enterprise software. So you sort of follow the waves of innovation, but you don't get to spend a lot of time on any particular project. So I started off my career before venture capital started in a startup that was a spin-off of AT&T at the time. That was in the supercomputing business, and there was an entrepreneurial activity that I enjoyed a lot, and I learned a lot, and I learned a lot of things that became very applicable to my eventual career in venture capital. And now I've sort of gone back to one project, and it's absolutely a lot of fun, not only because it's intellectually stimulating, because it's new technologies like AI technologies applied to biomedicine, which is not an industry I've worked a lot in. But also because here too you can really impact the world, you can really help save lives, and that's really rewarding again.
I love it. So let's touch on your venture experience for just a moment, and then I want to come back to the AI bio, because today we want to talk a little bit about deep technology. So I want to get into that, but on the venture side, what are you seeing as kind of the current state of venture capital in your mind, right? We had in the beginning of 2020, there was kind of an influx of where capital was or wasn't going to go. And now here as we're sprinting to the end of the year, that has been really turned on as funds have capital they have to deploy before the end of the year. And again, investors of all sizes and are looking at what to where to place their bets. But from your standpoint as an investor, so separating the two, where are you seeing the kind of current state of venture capital today?
Well, you pointed at the right issues there, because indeed, having raised many venture capital funds, I know very well that you have an investment period where you have, depending on the structure of the fund, 3 or 4 years to deploy, to make the initial commitment, all the initial commitments into companies. So making the initial investment in companies. And then over the course of the rest of the fund, you can invest more money, but it's only follow on. So your commitments must be made in the first 3 or 4 years of the life of the fund. And if you happen to start at 2020 is already the third year of your fund, and you don't get much done this year because of various events, then it becomes a problem. So you run the risk of not being able to deploy all the capital you want to deploy, right? Which it's bad for you, but it's also bad for your investors, because your investors are typically limited partners that are counting on you deploying a certain amount of capital in a certain way, right? So they're not happy when you deploy less capital, so it's an issue. And I've sort of been looking at this from both ends, right? Both as an investor and as an entrepreneur right now. So as an investor, it's really hard to make new commitments, because we are used. One thing we've learned this year, I think, right? There are some meetings that you can avoid going to in person. Like, I used to, even being in New York, I used to run around the city all the time, meeting people downtown, midtown, left and right, and take the car and go to New Jersey to meet people there. Have a lot of meetings, typically in person. All the meetings were in person. Now you realize that, hey, a lot of these meetings I could have taken like on Zoom or on video, right? Because it's really, if you know someone, it's really not important to go there and shake hands and hug them, right? If you know somebody, you can have a good exchange and understand each other. In video, it's a perfectly good medium to do that. However, for people you have never met yet, there's still an amount of hesitation when you haven't really seen them in the flesh, right? Because we're used to have the human contact, used to having the in-person contact. And I think that's a big challenge when you're making investments. You're making a commitment to a team of people. At the end, you're investing in people, nothing else. When you make an investment, you're committed to a team of people. It's really hard to make the commitment if you haven't really seen them, right, in person, shaking their hand and look at them in the eye in front across the table, right? And so I've seen, I've heard this from other investors too. A lot of people have deployed capital this year, but most of them have invested in companies already knew. So they already had at least 1 million on MedTech entrepreneur. They already were in the process of evaluating the company. And they proceeded and they completed the due diligence, they decided to invest and move on, or maybe there were entrepreneurs already knew from the past, and it was a little easier. But to invest from scratch in a company they've never met before, and all you do is meet with them in video, it's a challenge.
It is. It is. And there's that, like you said, there's that connection that you need. And we've talked about it on previous episodes here on VCTV that, that process has really been extended in most cases. So when people were meeting face to face, it might have happened just a little bit quicker. And in some cases with this kind of new process, it has extended it. And that's also opened up, more diligence and longer periods. But there's a positive to that in some areas, and that's building a more foundational relationship as well, and getting to know each other more, seeing if it's a better fit, learning how each other work, seeing the ups and downs as things are constantly changing.
Yeah, and it's it's important when you get to know someone. I mean, I've invested a lot in California from New York, right? And so I used to be on the Bay Area, once a month, basically attending board meetings, meeting companies, and investing in companies. But I used to, whenever I was about to make an investment, after deciding I want to make the investment, I would get together with the CEO and his wife. Typically, was typically a man CEO. Now it's changing, fortunately, but the CEO and his or her spouse to see how the dynamics work, right? Even when I joined after I joined a big venture fund here in New York. Before I actually made the final decision, I asked the managing partner to meet me and my wife and him and his wife, because I wanted to, again, see what kind of person, a lot you can tell from the companion that you choose, right? That from the person that is your spouse or your partner, and having the type of meeting is it makes a difference. It really tells you a lot about the person, right? And since you're investing in people, that's important. And now that the component is missing, as an entrepreneur, and now being on the other side of the table too, and starting a process of fundraising as we speak, right? I mean, just started a few days ago. It's also a challenge, right? Because I never met these people, and what do you do? I'm fortunate because I know a lot of the people I'm contacting, because I've worked with them before. So I can actually, I have a good relationship with many of these people. I can sort of bring them the company, and we can talk about it, and they know me at least. Maybe they haven't met my co-founders, but at least there is a starting point, right?
Right.
But for most people, it's hard. I would say that probably now more than ever, it's important to have relationships, to be introduced to the investor. People always say, be introduced by someone that knows the investor, because otherwise they don't pay attention to you. It's largely true. But I think today more than ever is even more important, because unless the investor has at least some connection with someone, I think it's very difficult.
Right. So let's say, and I couldn't agree more. And let's kind of switch gears over to the AI side as well. So I want to jump into deep tech. I mean, you're looking at artificial intelligence applied to biotech. So let's talk a little bit about what's happening in bio right now, and whether that's AI being applied or just generally, what are you seeing in terms of the current state of biotech and artificial intelligence being applied to it?
Well, I think it's a interesting area. One of the reasons why I got involved with this company is because I was fascinated by the whole space and the whole idea, and also it was a good learning experience for me, because I wanted to do something where I could learn more. And biomedical world has a big challenge, right? And the challenge comes from information, the amount of information that exists. I mean, there are literally thousands of scientific papers that get published every week. There are clinical trial information, there are patents, there's There's databases of drug, diseases, genes, and all sorts of stuff. And it's really hard for someone, whether you are a researcher or whether you are a practitioner or whether you are any point in the value chain of producing a drug, right? It's really hard to make the right decisions because there's so much information that, and typically people are specialized in something. It's really hard to go beyond the specialization to figure out how what you know also links to other items that may have an impact on what you're doing, but you have no access to it because you don't know that the information exists. That's one of the reasons why 92% of drugs that get into a first phase 1 of clinical trials don't get to the end, right? So like the success ratio of drugs is 6 or 7%, which is it's worse than investing in venture, right? It's really abysmal, and the reason is because not good decisions are made at every critical stage to decide to have all the relevant information, decide whether it's worth proceeding, whether something should be changed. So you go into a clinical trial, which costs millions and millions of dollars, and then in the middle of it you realize that this is not working, and then you realize that it could have figured it out that they couldn't work because you didn't do enough research, or you didn't do enough simulations, you didn't do enough of something, right? And the reason why you couldn't do that because there is not the technology to do all these things doesn't exist. Today, we are seeing companies developing products based on AI applied to different areas in the value chain that are having an effect on and they're helping decrease the risk of producing the drugs, right? In our case, we're focusing on the research process, right? So we're focusing in bringing together this massive amount of information so that people can connect the dots and get insights into things that they may have not thought about before because they're so specialized in one thing. But there are people doing very efficient simulations of clinical trials, in fact, right? Or they're doing they're using AI for drug discovery, right? So working with maybe technology companies, but they're working with biopharma companies to help them in the drug discovery process. So there are a lot of areas that apply to we can apply AI to the biopharma process, biopharma value chain, in the pharmacovigilance too, right? Which is after the fact when a drug is on the market, you have to track all the things that can happen, all the side effects, all the adverse events that you're required to track. Report to the FDA, stuff like that, right? So there are a lot of opportunities to apply AI into the biopharmaceutical process, and there is a number of companies that are doing that.
Yeah, no, I think you're right, and we want to turn it over to Doug real quick. Doug, if you could provide just a quick introduction, but right afterwards, we'd love to hear your view on the current state of deep technologies as applied to bio or MedTech as well. I'm not sure if you can hear us, but to you, Doug.
Yeah, and sorry if I have a little bit of background noise. I'm in the airport right now, actually in Montana. I was with a trip with the family, so actually traveling right now during the COVID times, not too bad. It's almost like just desolate, so plenty of space on the planes, no question. But no, and sorry if there's ambient noise. We'll try to get through that and all. But yeah, my focus has really been more on direct to consumer technologies in the health tech space, and I've been fascinated to hear what you all have been talking about just so far. But what we try to do is we believe there's a wave of how the democratization of healthcare will bring services into the home. And that's been our thesis at More Venture Partners. So I've been a partner at More Venture Partners for about 2 years now. And it's really the convergence between, as we were just talking about AI, but using devices to allow people to discover more of what's going on inside of their body, inside of the home. So an example of this is one of the companies we just invested into, or have invested twice now along the way, and it's coming to a public launch. It's called Vessel Health. So, and I can put it in the chat, but if you just go to vesselhealth.com, you can check out what that is. And that one in particular is doing urine analysis with colorimetric and lateral flow assays. And instead of like an Everly well, where you take a collection and send it back into the lab, a company like Vessel uses the cell phone as the scanning device. So the camera will be able to scan the test. And the process there is that, you just pee on the end of a basically urine analysis test strip. It's got over 20 different biomarkers on it. And you wait about 3 minutes, the assays develop, and you scan it with your phone with the app. And it does all the computation in the cloud, and then gives you answer as to what's going on inside your body almost instantaneously. And so instead of waiting or driving to the doctor, taking blood, it costs a few $100s. It takes days to get results back. This is a way to get an instant reading as far as what's going on inside your body. So we're big believers in leveraging the power of computer vision and AI in order to use the phone as the scanning device and bring a lot of these tests into the home. Vessel also has an application filed with the FDA to do antibody testing for coronavirus at home. So they're hoping to alleviate a lot of the labs that are doing testing, whether it's antigen tests or antibody tests, and allow the user to do that at home, because it's just a basic lateral flow assay. You have a finger stick test, a drop of blood, a lateral flow assay, and so the same algorithm is trained to be able to read that. So there's no reason to send millions of these samples into labs. So the big thing that they've been working on for about 4 years is scanning accuracy, and through computer vision and through machine learning, that's been getting a lot better. So now it's close to mass spectrometry, at least on the color metrics that are on the card right now. So again, with more venture partners, our thesis is really instead of the cumbersome process of getting in your car, drawing large amounts of blood, getting it tested, and waiting for those results, you can do it almost every day. So the cost of this card is $10. So our hope is that on a subscription basis, people will be doing it once or twice a week. And then what you do with that data is the most important thing. I think any data that we gather, it's useless unless you actually act on it. So for me, I took a test. I realized I was deficient in magnesium. My cortisol was spiking. My potassium levels were really low. My zinc levels were low. So I started taking supplementation and eating better. So the other thing this group is trying to do, and there's a lot of groups out there doing this, whether it's your microbiome or whether it's urine or blood, is basically put together, a food plan, for example, that ranks foods based on their nutrient density. So if you're deficient in a particular element, the foods are ranked. Or a custom supplement, instead of just taking a multivitamin that you don't know really what's going down the hatch, you can build it specifically to what the needs are. So we're just big believers in this quantified kind of self space and the democratization of an individual's health data, and then how to take action. More than anything, it's how to take action. And I think eventually what's going to happen is you can do lipid panels at home. You'll be able to do blood glucose, A1C, and then eventually early detection of cancer with some of these signals. And I don't believe that all healthcare should be performed at home or via telehealth. I do think having a primary care physician, having the face-to-face experience, that's still very important. But if you can dig up all these data points and then use these technologies inside of the home in order to make educated decisions, that's I think the way of the future. And the last thing I'll mention as far as this technology that's interesting is, we actually think toilets will start to become smart devices. Yes. Where in the morning, you just do what you would do regularly, go to the bathroom, and it starts to kind of sequence what's going on inside the body. We've talked to General Electric as well. They're doing a really interesting new refrigerator that has this big LED panel on the front of the refrigerator. And what they want to do is connect the smart toilet to the refrigerator. So when your family, does their business in the morning, you biometrically scan in, it knows who you are, and then it shares that data with the refrigerator, and it builds basically a nutritional guide for the day, a recipe and eating plan for the family to make sure everyone is optimized. So anyway, I'll pause there. I just thought this space has been really interesting, and at More Venture Partners, we're investing deeply there.
No, I appreciate it. I mean, I had a few follow-up questions, but you answered most of them. So no stress. And we are coming up to about the lightning round where we're going to have to wrap up soon anyway. So I do want to come to both of you around a very important topic because you both touched on this. Is we've got these great devices and technologies, software, hardware, whatever it may be, that are collecting data on us. Wonderful. And to Doug, I completely agree. Data is great, but it's useless if not understood and or applied in some kind of either predictive or actionable way. However, with all this data collected, there is a concern around privacy. And what happens? How is that data used? How is it not used? How is it protected? What's in terms of HIPAA compliance, or what is not standardized, et cetera. So would love to come to each of you for just a quick few minute thoughts on what you see as an area of opportunity around security and the privacy of data when it comes to healthcare and biotech. Because if it's at home or it's in the office, there's a big issue around this. So Doug, I'm going to pause on you for just a second. Alessandro, I'm going to come to you first. Where do you see security and privacy kind of changing around data in these industries? Oh, you're on mute. No worries.
I just realized that. Well, there is a lot of attention paid to that, being paid to that because, for example, in Europe you have a regulation like GDPR, and then you have to follow. Otherwise, bad things can happen to you if you don't comply. So they at least set up some guidelines, some rules. Here you have, in the case of health information, you have HIPAA, so you have to follow those rules. I can answer. I think there are a number of technologies I've seen over the past few years in the security space, cybersecurity space, technologies that aiming to protect information, but also so that there are a variety of approaches to doing that, but also the from a company standpoint. I mean, since I'm working with a company that is actually putting together all sorts of data and correlating data and using both publicly available data as well as private data from biopharma companies or clinical trials or even patient data sometimes, they need to be very careful. And there was the people that started the company are people that have come out of large companies like Bloomberg and places where they had massive systems brought up to scale with security in it. So they paid a lot of attention from the beginning how to secure the information and how to put even Chinese walls within a corporation so that if you have data from multiple departments, you can actually divide it up and not mix it up and not allow somebody who's not allowed to have access to something access to data they're not supposed to. So I think if you're building this type of systems, the thinking needs to be done at the beginning, and it needs to be built from the ground up. If you have existing databases or data repositories that need to be protected, then there are a number of cybersecurity type of technologies that are available that one can look into.
So Doug, to you, I mean, same thing. I mean, you're with the company that you're working with and just others, how are you handling or how are you thinking about security, and how should others as the industry be thinking about security around these types of industries and products?
Yeah. I mean, I think the default setting here, and this is actually a cultural consideration as far as how the company conducts itself. In any financial model or anything else that's been put together for Vessel, someone's personal information is never considered monetizable, and that's just the default setting. I think that's appropriate in this day and age. Like, treat your customers you'd want to be treated as far as data privacy and personal identifiable information, PII. And so under HIPAA compliance, the product is built fully compliant, but that's fine as a checkbox. But I do again think that the culture of any tech startup that holds someone's intimate personal information, the default setting has to be that we're going to protect it at all costs, that we are going to value it and respect it as a steward of that data. Now, with that said, the way the product is built is there are really clear terms and conditions and privacy settings to make sure that when someone reads through the terms and conditions and opts in, that the first 4 paragraphs are very, very clear, plain English, that says, again, our default setting is that we'll never share your information. But there is messaging throughout the user journey as they start taking more and more test cards that explains that there's a great opportunity to share what you're gathering. I'll be over there. That you can share what your data says that could help other foundations or other organizations make sense of, say, food sensitivities, or during pregnancy, what is the optimal nutrition, as you're going through pregnancy, or how are magnesium levels associated to better sleep? There's a lot of ways that us as consumers can take our data and improve other lives, and so that's the goal of Vessel, at least, is to sometimes anonymize and aggregate data and potentially share it in order to make more of a healthy cohort for everyone. So I think, again, it starts with the cultural positioning of the company. Stay compliant, stay HIPAA compliant, but beyond that, serve your customer well. But again, I do think a good product team will be able to in a healthy way, convince the user along the way to opt in deeper and deeper into sharing data that can help the community. And of course, it's fine to monetize that as a company as long as you have the explicit consent of the user. But you have to focus on why you're doing it. Is there a benefit, saying, again, to sharing, those food sensitivities or whatever else that might be? Like, what is that group you're trying to benefit with that sharing? So I would just say that. But again, a quick point would be, bring your product team into that conversation. A lot of people just completely have these silos, in these startups where you have your compliance department, you have that in the corner, where that just is seen as a liability. It's like, bring them into the product discussion with that in the marketing discussion, make it an integrated part of the company, because consumers demand that now. And it's important.
Gentlemen, unfortunately, we are coming to the top of the hour, so we are at time. And I do want to make sure each of you get a few minutes or just a minute or two, for closing thoughts, and then let everyone know where they can find you. So, Alessandro, we're going to start with you. Any additional closing thoughts that you want to add around these industries and some of your background? And then where can everyone find you online? And we'll come to Doug next. So, Alessandro, to you.
Yeah, I can find in many different places. Just a closing thoughts. I think this whole area of technology applied to health and to biomedicine, I think it's a very exciting area. It's definitely one of the big trends of the future. Has a lot to do, because of the magnitude of the problems, has also a big impact that will leverage new computing platforms will become available, like quantum computing. To get to a point where you can have like intelligent assistants that can actually gather an incredible ocean of information and process it and derive connections. It requires a lot of computing power, and I think the platforms of the future will take this to the next level. And if we can improve the world of biomedicine, that will mean more lives saved, and drugs will cost less. It will be more affordable. It will be available to everyone. So I think it's a big important area to work in.
Wonderful. And Doug, to you, any quick closing thoughts?
In terms of where to find me, you guys can share feel free to share my email address, but they can also find me on LinkedIn. Should be easy to find.
And where can they find the company too? The company that you're working with, the AI BioTech company.
It's called epistemic.ai, and in fact, my email address that I share with you is that address. Wonderful. And but epistemic.ai, look it up on the web.
Awesome. And Doug, to you, quick closing thoughts. Where can everyone find you online?
Yeah, email, and again, Kyle, feel free to share that. And Alessandro would love to connect with you further as well and learn more about your work. It seems fascinating. So please send my email out. It's Doug, DOUG, at moorevp.com for more venture partners. Find me on the site there if you like as well. And the closing thought would just be, I think we're in a really fascinating and exciting time. I think, technologies that were relegated only to the lab are coming into the home very quickly. I think we'll discover more about ourselves in the next 10 years than we have since the beginning of medicine, just by taking these tools and doing continual monitoring. So I'm really excited about it. But anyone else in the space, at least that's interested in it, reach out. Would love to strike up a conversation. So.
Absolutely. And gentlemen, thank you both for your time today and sharing some of your thoughts and insights around where these industries are and how deep technologies are playing a role and where they are going in the future. And to you, our audience, if you like what you heard today, click subscribe, give us a thumbs up. Definitely reach out to both of our investors here today to continue the conversation if you're focused in these areas or want to learn more. And also a big thank you to Elena, Maria, and to the entire LATOKEN team for making VCTV possible every single day. We'll be back here tomorrow and all week with multiple episodes of VCTV every single day. Thank you, Doug, to tell you everything that's happening and changing around technologies, industries, and regions around the world. With that, I'm your host, Kyle Ellicott. You can find me on all social medias at Kyle Ellicott. And again, do reach out to our investors and make sure you add context when reaching out to any of us as to where you saw us as well, to make sure we have the right conversation and a great one at that. So I'm your host, Kyle Ellicott. We'll see you soon, and everyone have a great day. Thank you, guys.